Funny enough, even though I've interviewed so many people, I don't interview people now because it's just easier to give them the job, pay them, and then you can see what kind of work they do. You communicate. But what I realized is through those 100 interviews, some of the best interviewees were terrible at the job and vice versa, just because some people can interview well and others cannot. So I realized it was a bad way to evaluate people. A quick example, I'm not very creative, so I'm just looking at things on my desk. So a keyword that maybe you would go after is kind of a very long, more specific kind of phrase. So maybe it's the best DSLR camera for vlogging. So it's very specific.
This podcast is brought to you by Bambassadors.com, the go-to platform for e-commerce brands to create video reviews that boost social proof and sales on TikTok and beyond. Get your first video review created and posted by a genuine creator, completely free, no strings attached, and no credit card required at Bambassadors.com.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
I'm awesome, Yaron. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm pumped to be here.
Awesome, great. And you're almost one of the first guests that didn't ask me how to pronounce my name, yet you nailed it. So it's great.
That's cool. I was nervous for a second, but I used to work at this company called Amdocs, which I'm sure you probably heard of, right?
Their headquarters are next to my parents' house back in Israel. So yeah.
No way. I worked with a lot of folks from your country.
Cool. Awesome. So we're already talking about your background. So can you elaborate and share your background story?
Sure. I started in management consulting and some project management in the software industry, worked at that great company, Amdocs, for about 10 years or so. And I didn't love it. I mean, it was a typical sort of consulting job where corporate ladder, there was a lot of politics, but it was a fine job in certain ways. And I learned a ton about building teams and project management and running an organization. But it definitely left me sort of burnt out by the end of the day, most days. And back in 2013, I just randomly found the Smart Passive Income podcast, dove in headfirst into affiliate marketing and SEO, which I knew nothing about. And then fast forward a couple years, I actually got laid off from Amdocs. And then I decided to take that side hustle full time, which I wasn't there yet. But over the course of, several months to about a year, I was able to replace my old income with, affiliate marketing. And later I've added, other pieces to the puzzle. So I have online courses, I have a couple podcasts, a YouTube channel, in addition to my blog. So I've been doing that for, almost 5-6 years now. And I love working for myself.
I also love working for myself. I just had a call yesterday with an Israeli couple. They are in a kind of similar situation to yours. They were laid off or quit, and now they are thinking of starting a side hustle, whether they should do this solely focus on this or find another job and trying to develop the side hustle while they are working in the 9-to-5 job. So what was your mindset? And back then, what did you think what were the pros and cons of doing this without finding an alternative?
Sure. I think, it was interesting because I didn't have the entrepreneurship bug in the beginning. I was just, fairly content to go along with the, corporate path. But as I started learning a little bit more and was getting the mindset that maybe it's risky to work for a company because they can lay you off versus actually working for yourself. Then you can, control things. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles, there's a lot of challenges. And once you figure out that there's a lot of opportunities out there and you actually can do probably more than you think, it's hard to hold yourself back. And, one other piece that you mentioned there with working a full-time job. And, of course, there's some great benefits. There's, building your network. You could actually learn while being paid if you're working for another company. So there's some strategic reasons why it could be okay to do it. Now, at this point in time, I'd have a really tough time working for a company or having a boss just because my mindset has shifted and I'm a lot more stubborn than I used to be, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, it's hard to balance everything where you have a boss and there's some things you have to complete for your day job. And then you're burning the candle at both ends. You're either waking up really early or staying up late to get the work done on your side hustle. And, there's some rough years when you're, starting off your business. I'm sure you did the same kind of stuff, Yaron, right?
Yes, I get what you mean. I guess it's really context dependent on the situation. How demanding is your job? We started like while we were having a 9 to 5, and we just came back home and we like sprinted and worked during the weekends. But I'm not sure it's for everyone. I know that a lot of starting entrepreneurs are struggling in this transition phase. So it's interesting to hear like the background story. But anyway, let's talk about what you're doing today, which is mainly SEO, and you also have a YouTube channel and also a podcast. So productivity isn't an issue when it comes to you.
Yeah, I have sort of layered on the different sort of pieces of the platform. And I never thought I'd have, platform in air quotes or anything like that. But it started with the blog in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then, slowly over the course of 8 years, I've added different pieces. And I really love the audio medium, and podcasting is fantastic. It goes back to how I got into it. Like I said at the beginning, I found smart passive income. So that was my gateway. And I love, the radio format, talk radio, and this podcast is perfect for, people like us, especially like if you have a day job, you may not be able to watch YouTube all day, right? Because your boss is not going to want you to watch YouTube. It may even be blocked, but you can put headphones in and put your earbuds in and listen to a podcast all day long. And then, slowly plot how you're going to leave your day job. And like you said, I do SEO as well. Primarily, it's only for my own sites. And I've gone through cycles where I've had, a few sites and I've sold some off. I'm definitely not one of the, portfolio type website owners, just because I do have my hands in all these different places, and I don't like to be too busy either. So that's one thing that I'm really sort of cultivating over the last 18 months or so, is just working less and not trying to be overly productive. So I'm really focused on the things that I need to ship, but I am cutting out a lot of things that I don't want to do anymore.
Can you elaborate about this, about the process of outsourcing or delegating and automating a lot of stuff and choosing what to focus about?
I'll start with the eliminating things. So there's a lot of waste. And I think back to my corporate job, there was even more waste. And I'm thinking about meetings and conference calls and just sort of wasted time. And I could think back where maybe there were 15 or 20 people getting paid over $100,000 a year. And it's such an expensive meeting to get essentially nothing done. Well, I don't have that kind of waste anymore. However, I do see I'm working on things that maybe I don't need to do at all, like no one needs to do, or it's something that I could sort of batch. So when you're looking at all your tasks, the easiest thing is to just get rid of them. No one should be doing this at all. And sometimes it's just a habit. We like to feel a little busy, or at least that's one of my symptoms is I'll just keep sitting here at my desk and doing a little bit more work when I really don't even need to do anything at all. And then as far as outsourcing, there's only a few things that I really need to do, and many other things I could hand off to a VA. Now, I don't want to have a huge team, so I only have a couple VAs. One of them is a video editor who also serves as a podcast editor as well. And then I have sort of an executive assistant who could help me in all sorts of different areas. Now, there have been times when I've had huge sort of content teams because I needed a lot of stuff written. So maybe I would have 10 to 12 writers and an editor and a sort of a content manager, and then they would all work together. I would typically only have to work with the editor and the content manager and not directly with the writers very often. So, that's kind of a easy way to think about the team. Now, it's not necessarily easy to hire the people and deal with the HR portion, but once you have the team set up, everyone's onboarded, then you should be in good shape. And that is actually one of the great skills that I got from working in the consulting area, just because I was often put on projects where we had to onboard people. They didn't know what we were working on or how things were done on that project, and it could change from project to project. So I was very good at bringing people on, giving them job aids, helping them get up and running, and then letting them do their work.
Awesome. It kind of reminds me of something that I'm thinking a lot about lately, is when you leave a corporate job, you kind of dislike anything that goes on in the corporate. But as soon as you evolve your business, you kind of start to appreciate a little a portion of the processes that are going on in the corporate world. So, for example, how I would like to more people to treat an e-commerce business as a startup, because I think that a lot of e-commerce store owners just treat it as if it's like some sort of a grocery store. They don't even put a lot of thought into this. They don't build like a plan and strategy. And in the startup world, you have people doing this in such a professional manner. So I like the fact that you have the background from the corporate. What practices do you take from the corporate world into your work today?
So aside from the couple that I just mentioned with the job aids, one other great thing is I was part of, I guess, the leadership or management team where we built a huge team. So I've interviewed probably 100 people, like, professional positions. So they were, hour-long interviews, really helpful when I started to hire people from Upwork, which is the primary place where I will hire freelancers and such. Funny enough, even though I've interviewed so many people, I don't interview people now, except for very specialized positions, because it's just easier to give them the job, pay them, and then you can see what kind of work they do. You communicate. But what I realized is through those 100 interviews, some of the best interviewees were terrible at the job and vice versa, just because some people can interview well and others cannot. So I realized it was a bad way to evaluate people. Some of the other items, I think I may come back to it, but I was going to say I figured out something that I didn't want to have, which was the huge teams, because I did have teams that I worked on that I was in charge of, and I didn't want to be in the top of an org chart again, unless it was a very, very shallow org chart. I just want a couple people. And I've had, some peers that I work with now and some business partners where we've worked on projects together, and they didn't have that opportunity in their professional career. And I think maybe they wanted to try it out and see what it was like to have a team, but it's a huge responsibility when people are counting on you for, paying for their mortgage and stuff. So, and if you don't have to do it, at least for me, if I don't have to have that responsibility, it's a little bit less stress. And I respect anyone who wants to try that. Give it a shot. Obviously, like if you want to do something really big, you probably need to have a lot of people, but it wasn't for me. And I like the sort of carefree, like less stress is better for me.
So for sure, I can relate, and I totally agree. I also I feel the same. So
yeah, what's your team like? How many people do you have?
I also have like 3 or 4 VAs. And I hire based on task. If I need now a specific, we're launching like an influencer marketing campaign. So I hired 3 VAs from Upwork as well. And I'm giving all of them the same guidelines and same instructions. And I'm going to see who creates the best outcome, kind of like what you suggested. And I always try to automate before I delegate. Most of the time I fail and then I delegate.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. And I've hired, 3 or 4 people just to test everyone out. I pay everyone, right? I'm not trying to get free work or anything, but I just want to see how they work and the final product.
Awesome. Yes, cool. So we also, before we hopped on the call, we said that we'll talk about mainly SEO and the keyword golden ratio, because I know this is a subject that you're promoting. And a lot of e-commerce store owners are struggling these days because Facebook ads seem to have gone crazy with all the iOS update, and the results are really going down. And a lot of e-commerce store owners are seeking alternative. And a lot are thinking about creating more SEO related stuff. So can you elaborate about the keyword golden ratio and your whole strategy of publishing content?
Yes. So number one, I want to point the listeners towards a couple podcast episodes that I've done, and I'll get you the links, but essentially it was an e-commerce dropshipping store owner who had their advertising shut down by wherever they were advertising. Doesn't even matter. And they had to figure out how to get traffic. So they went the SEO route. They used the keyword golden ratio or the KGR. And they were able to not only recover their traffic, but grow their site to a huge size. The last time I talked to him, his top line revenue was $500K per month. Nice. So he was doing pretty solid. Organic SEO traffic from Google. So check out those episodes. The general idea with the keyword golden ratio is you're trying to find very low competition, long tail keywords. And these are keywords that are underserved on the internet. So it's a little hard to explain in audio form, but we could point you towards a blog post, and there's a free calculator and all this stuff. It's generally a free way to do keyword research. So you find the number of all in title results, which is an advanced Google search command. So all in title, and then you type in your search keyword phrase there, and then you divide it by the monthly search volume. And you end up with some number. You're looking for something under 0.25 for the lowest competition. That's the ratio. So the KGR or keyword golden ratio would be some value. So all in title results divided by the monthly search volume. And essentially what that tells you is there's very few results online indexed in Google where people are searching for those keyword phrases. So again, you could think of it kind of as the supply and demand, and you're going for the lowest competition. So that's the general idea. A quick example, I'm not very creative, so I'm just looking at things on my desk. So a keyword that maybe you would go after is kind of a very long, more specific kind of phrase. So maybe it's the best DSLR camera for vlogging. So it's very specific, and the content can be written so that it's for a vlogger, someone that is probably going to publish on YouTube, for example. So you can kind of tailor the content so that when someone lands on the page, they feel immediately like, oh yeah, I am going to try to get started publishing vlogs on YouTube, for example, versus something more general, which would be best DSLR camera for video, something like that. So I'll pause for a second since I said a lot.
Quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time now, we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms. And it also supports our mission of helping as many people as possible to become better marketers and better entrepreneurs. So if you're not driving and it wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over your podcast app. And we will love you even more than we already do. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
No, that's cool. Can you please continue? Like, what is the next phase? Because let's say we exhausted the majority of the keywords or wrote enough articles that meets this ratio. So what is the next step?
So, well, once you find them, well, then, you write the content. And again, some of these are so specific, and I'll give a quick tip because you may find some that are very similar. So you can combine a few of those, but sometimes the context is different. So if someone is searching for best DSLR camera for vlogging versus astrophotography, well, those are two totally different purposes. But if someone says DSLR for YouTube talking head videos, that's pretty close to vlogging, but it's different than astrophotography. So you can combine some together if necessary. And the other sort of thing is you will probably start finding pockets of these. So it's a little difficult to figure a few of these out at first, but then once you get started, you'll find a bunch about maybe DSLR cameras or mirrorless cameras in YouTube, and a lot about vlogging in YouTube. And then if you explore over here in the astrophotography area, you might find information about lenses and other tripods, other gear that you might need for night photography. So that is generally the idea. And the big thing with the keyword golden ratio is it's such low competition that typically you'll be able to rank on Google in a very short time. So when I first started sharing this idea, it was within 24 hours.
Nice.
Depending on how old your website is and how much authority and backlinks and SEO power that your site has, it may still be that fast. If your site's brand new, it might take a little while to get out of the Google sandbox, but generally you rank very fast with a KGR keyword.
And let's say, how would you create the content? Do you use some sort of tool? First of all, do you use any tools for this research? And do you later use any tools for writing the content? Because there are a lot of people are using Surfer SEO. Some people started using like AI, like Jarvis, in order to create the content. Do you suggest any of these tools?
So I think the optimization tools are probably good to use. So like you said, Surfer, Market Muse is very good. I think there's one called Phrase. It's kind of a commodity at this point. There's so many of them. So you probably pick one, stick with it. I'm sure it's probably fine. The AI portion, I have not played with very much. And I think it probably still has a little ways to go. Everyone that I have heard that say it's really great and they can write content using one of the tools, I won't mention any of them specifically, they're all affiliates, and I can't necessarily trust what they're telling me because they're getting paid to do it. So I haven't explored it much, and I'm happy to pay writers from Upwork, like we talked about, and have them write it. Typically, I'll use a template, and I think we'll probably be able to hook people up with the specific templates that I give all my templates and systems away, and the KGR calculator and all that stuff. So there's sort of a general template that you could use as a starting point. And then after that, you could customize it for whatever kind of product you have. But yeah, generally it's a, templated process and works pretty well. Now, as we're talking about it, the examples that I gave are very product focused, and it's even lower competition typically if you go for informational and how-to content, which might be perfect for an e-commerce owner because you're selling products, people have a problem, you could help them solve it with a product or use the product or something like that. So those types of how-to keywords are fantastic, especially for an e-com owner.
When you go to Upwork, do you look for writers that are aware of this keyword golden ratio, or are you going to do all the learning and research on your end and just tell them, okay, write a piece of content about this?
I typically would do the keyword research on my own. I mean, I'm pretty good at keyword research, so I should probably do it. But there's not very many writers that are necessarily aware of the keyword golden ratio. To be fair, I haven't searched for it, but it's a very obscure, little piece of information, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few writers that put it on their resume these days.
How would you go about it with regards to building a team of writers? Would you hire like a manager? First thing, would you hire a manager, or would you hire like a few writers and only afterwards promote one of them? Or after having a few writers, would you hire a manager? How would you suggest doing this?
Perfect. Yeah. So the latter, and basically what I like to do is hire a few writers, and then I will keep the good ones. So as we talked about before, I just like to see how they work. I'll typically hire maybe twice as many writers as I think I will need. Don't stress yourself out and hire like 10 people all at once. I would still hire like 2 to 3 at a time and just slowly build up the team. Keep the great ones. Once you have some writers that are working well with you, you will probably identify at least 20% that potentially could do the content manager or editor role. And people get bored writing, people get burned out, writing thousands of words per day. And I would just send them a message, see if they wanted to do something a little bit different, get away from the writing, you already know that you're communicating pretty well. And then typically I'd move them from a fixed project price per article to hourly, since the content management editor role, it could vary based on the quality of the writing or whatever they're processing. So I move them to an hourly role, and then they would be able to usually work with about 5 to 7, 8 writers or so, depending on how fast the writers write and how many hours the editor can work. So I kind of match it up, and you can adjust the team accordingly from there. And you can really grow as big of a team as you want, because they're sort of little groups that can work together autonomously. There's no dependency on other teams. So it's a great way to, build up a team here, build up a team there. You can promote another writer and then just slowly, grow the team.
Do you prefer doing this instead of just hiring an SEO agency? What are the pros and cons of building this on your own, in opposing to hiring an SEO agency which already has this hierarchy and already has the best practices, stuff like that?
The big advantage, with the agency, is you don't have to deal with all the people and the HR. So you just have one project manager or an account manager that you work with. So it's very hands-off, and it's great. I mean, I've worked with several agencies and test them out. However, of course, that comes at a cost. It is a very expensive cost, because the agencies are just doing exactly what I just mentioned, right? They are just hiring people, and they have to pay for the management, they have to pay for themselves, and they have to earn some money. So they're marking it up like a crazy amount. So basically, the big advantage with building your own team is if you could handle the HR portion, then you're going to get the same or better quality for a fraction of the price. And again, it comes at a cost. There's no free ride. There's always trade-offs. But if you could figure out how to hire people, then you can make that work for a much, much cheaper price. And, it varies. There's some agencies that are, really thin margins. And then there's some agencies that are charging a huge amount, and their content isn't, that great. And it's just, branding and marketing and who's referring them and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So with regards to cost, let's say we have a listener at the moment that is really thinking about moving to SEO, or at least investing in SEO. So how would you manage their expectations? What would be like their minimum investment, and what should they expect within like 3 months or 6 months time? Obviously, this is a general question and it varies depending on the context, but in general.
Okay. So I'll start at the beginning of that, and then maybe we can walk our way through it. So as far as like on a per article basis, so I think that'll be the easiest way to break it down, since everyone's budget is going to be much different. So when I first started hiring people, I realized that I could hire people that were brand new on Upwork that didn't have reviews, and they really valued those reviews. So I would hire brand new people and take a chance on them. The pro is they'll work for much cheaper. So you could potentially get like 1,000-word article, and you could scale it up sort of linearly. So if it's 2,000 words, you just double it. So 1,000-word article for like $15, $18. So, if you're working with some geo arbitrage and you're able to hire someone who has moved to a cheaper part of the world, or they live in a cheaper part of the world, that's good money, and everybody wins in that situation. Then the downside, if you hire a brand new person, is as they get better and as they get more reviews, then they'll raise their price. Exactly. So you potentially could lose them. The thing that is happening is, as like more and more people are trying to get writers, it has gotten more expensive. So, nowadays, I mean, you can still find them for $15 for 1,000 words, but it's much harder and the quality may not be as good. So nowadays it may be closer to like 25 to 40 or 50, depending on the quality of the writer, the location. And if you shop around, you could, potentially get some people to work for a little cheaper. But if you are trying to find the writers, then you don't want to waste too much time having to hire new people all the time. So there's some value in just finding a good one, paying them well, and keeping them around. And I think you were kind of angling towards like how much traffic might we see, like how long will it take? And that is so hard to answer, and I don't have any specific stats in my head. Although in the episode that I referred to, a guy named John that had great success, he had some specific results. And I mean, the thing is, if it's high ticket drop shipping or whatever kind of business model, but if it's high ticket, you don't need as much traffic. Exactly. So if it's the right people, then you just need a little bit of traffic. So I have seen people go on content sprints, which is what I sort of prefer, where maybe in one quarter I'll publish 300 articles. So spend a little time ramping up the team. Once everybody's gelled together, then you could really step it up and publish a lot more. And typically you will see a huge amount of growth on Google Search Console, and you can see the number of impressions really jump as you're publishing more content. And one sort of minute thing that sometimes we forget about, especially when you're publishing a lot, is to internally link your site, especially with those SEO driven pieces of content. So it's great if you can, strategically interlink your site and make sure, everything can be crawled easily.
Awesome. Great. Well, we covered a lot, and I think this could be like a perfect strategy for like a beginner or somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with regards to SEO. Do you have anything else that you would like to mention or cover before we conclude this conversation?
Oh, wow. Well, I think when you're trying to build a team, especially to publish a lot of content, don't try to go too fast, especially if you haven't hired too many people before. And one thing that I often say is, even if you had unlimited budget and you could hire as many people as you wanted, it is pretty hard to manage a lot of people. So if you hired 50 people all at once and you didn't have a system in place, you didn't have SOPs where you can just ramp people up quickly, it may take you 1 or 2 emails per person to get them up to speed. And if they ask a question, there's 2 or 3 emails going back and forth. So if you hired 50 people, you may be dealing with hundreds of email messages per day. That's unsustainable, and it would drive you crazy. It's very stressful. So, go slow. And I mentioned, publishing 300 articles, ramp that up. Maybe you're only publishing 1 or 2 articles per week as you're figuring out the system, and then you could ramp it up. So everything is sort of incremental growth. Take your time, keep it simple. You don't need to have a very complicated project management solution. You can make things complicated later. So just keep it simple at the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like growing organically with the business. This is something that a lot of people think that they should maybe buy a running business, start reaping the benefits and the fruits of that business. But the problem is, if you're not experienced enough, so it will take you a lot of effort to catch up with the operation, and you probably won't succeed because you need to grow organically based on your skills. So this is why I oppose to buying a website that is already generating significant amounts of revenue that you didn't handle on your own before.
Perfect example. Yep. You can accidentally, come up and then, tear the thing apart if you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much, Doug. Where can people find more about you and contact you?
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. You can check out a couple places. So I have a podcast where I talk about affiliate marketing and SEO. That's called The Doug Show, and all the big platforms out there. And then I have another one on personal finance and financial independence. And I have a co-host, Carl Jensen. He and I teamed up to work on that show. He's awesome, dude. He retired when he was 43, and we're part of this financial independence community, which is very, very fun. And then I blog over at Niche Site Project, so people can get all the templates and stuff that I mentioned there. And I'm on YouTube as well. I have a lot of videos. I do a live stream usually once a week, and I have probably hundreds of videos on just success stories with some of the specifics that we talked about, often with affiliate marketing, but sometimes it's with agencies, sometimes it's with drop shipping stores and some people that actually went from affiliate marketing to then selling and white labeling their own products and stuff. So wide range over there.
Awesome. Great. And I think we should meet again to make another episode about productivity because you have many.
Yeah. We didn't even get into that stuff. Yeah. I love productivity and, a quick teaser, which I don't know if we'll be able to conclude it at any point in the future, in the near term, but I have realized the goal isn't necessarily to be as productive as possible all the time. What a cliffhanger, right?
Sure. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Doug. Take care.
Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number 1, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called EcomXFactor Official. Number 2, check out our Facebook group, which is called EcomXFactor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues, plus leave a review at your favorite podcast app.